Thank you everyone who has joined us and who's just logging in right now. So in this webinar, me and Richard, we're going to be talking about running smarter Net Promoter Score campaigns with SmileBack, but we'll definitely be talking about some tips and ideas which are really relevant across customer feedback in general. And then we'll be getting into some of the specifics. We've, made some really kind of important releases and improvements to SmileBack NPS offer in the last couple of months, and I particularly want to get into those. But we'll go from the kind of general to the specific, so don't worry if you're still wondering a bit even what this NPS thing is. And we'll, of course, be taking questions. You can drop in questions anytime, but especially at the end.
Yeah, we always, for those of you who have joined us for a SmileBack webinar before of this nature, we make these incredibly interactive. So please get involved in the chat, send questions across at any point in the Q&A box for Eben or myself, and we will jump in and we will pause regularly to answer those questions. And we've left time at the end of the webinar to do a Q&A with any questions that are left over there. So get involved. For those of you I've not had the pleasure to meet yet, my name is Richard Tubb. I used to run a managed service provider business that relied rather heavily on customer satisfaction for growth. So I speak similar to you as a former MSP, as somebody who runs an MSP business, very, very familiar with it. But I know that you're all here for the main man today, the legend that is Eben Marks. So Eben, let's jump straight in and talk about Net Promoter Score. So we talk about customer satisfaction quite a lot, don't we? Net Promoter Score though, and we've got an overview of what we're going to talk about today, but Net Promoter Score specifically, what is it all about?
Yeah, so Net Promoter Score is a type of survey for surveying customer satisfaction and customer loyalty. It's a kind of a standardized metric. It was devised specifically by some kind of consultants and business school people about 20 years ago. It's used a lot by very large companies, especially in the US, your sort of Fortune 500 companies, but it's becoming much more common with small and medium businesses, with consumer and business-to-business businesses all over the world. And at its heart, it's very simple. So there's the kind of classic wording of the NPS question is how likely are you to recommend the company name to a friend or colleague, or it can vary a little bit depending on the context. So usually you get that, and then you get a comment or comment possibilities for a comment later. And the idea of NPS is that it's asking a pretty broad question, but also quite I would say quite challenging one. So, it's not just, are we doing okay? Is it fine? It's like, how likely are you going to actually recommend us? Do you like our business so much you would recommend us to someone else? And you'll see there's a number scale there, 0 to 10. Again, that is the typical NPS answer option. And it runs all the way from 0 up to 10. The idea being that people give you a 9 or 10, they're called promoters. Those people are really happy with your business, very likely to keep being customers for a long time, and as the kind of name suggests with the promoter and the question suggests, hopefully likely to actually recommend you. And then you've got the passives, the kind of 7 and 8 in the middle, who are on the fence, maybe it's okay, they don't love everything. And then actually most of the scale, 0 to 6, gets categorized all together as detractors, which is seen as quite an issue. Like, maybe they're not going to stay customers for very long, maybe they're not very happy. So it's a good way of getting a sense of customer loyalty, customer intentions, and really trying to survey the entire relationship between your business and your client.
So let's be really clear about, and the reason I'm going to ask this question is many of us get confused between NPS and CSAT, customer satisfaction, and when they are used within a managed service provider or indeed any business. So how can you define with clarity CSAT versus NPS and when you should use them?
Yeah. So customer satisfaction, that if you are a SmileBack customer, that's the one you're almost certainly using first before NPS. I don't know if any of our customers use NPS and not CSAT, but CSAT is where we started, and for the first 4 or 5 years was the only one we provided. CSAT is perfect for asking people about a specific interaction with your business. So classically with SmileBack, that would be the closure or the resolution of a support ticket. How did we do on this request, like this one request? In another setting, say a commerce setting, let's say you buy something and as you leave the shop, you might actually see well, they might have gone away since COVID, but like a physical version of one of these, right? Like, how was your visit today? Like the one, not how do you feel about Zara, the company, just how was your visit to this Zara store right now, today? Our CEO, Andrew Wallace, likes to say that CSAT is like, how did this date go? And NPS is, how do you feel about our relationship? So it's,
I
you
love
know,
that.
one is like specific, one particular interaction, and one is like on a much larger scale and a longer time frame.
So just for my clarity, and perhaps other like MSPs watching today, CSAT typically for tickets and interactions of that nature. If you get a bad CSAT score, would you say it's something that you can normally jump in and resolve on a case-by-case basis? If your NPS score is looking negative, that is indicative of a much bigger issue than an individual ticket.
It can vary, but I would say it does tend to trend in that direction. So somebody, with might give you a neutral or negative CSAT score and say something that is very specific, like this took too long, or you said my printer would work and my printer doesn't work. Whereas NPS, you'll often see, and this is actually true of the good feedback as well, that it's often something, yeah, it's bigger, like feel like your service has been getting worse, or too expensive, there's much cheaper alternatives out there. Or the goods, the goods on a CSAT review might be, wow, you fixed this so quickly. The good comment on NPS might be, we've used you for years. We're really happy. You always provide us really good service.
Yeah. Would you say, and this is a question coming from my perspective that I've never asked about NPS before, would you say that a good NPS score can be an indicator of a potential business growth?
You would tend to, I mean, that's certainly ideally what NPS can help tell you, that, yeah, if you have a consistently high NPS score with a good number of responses, you would certainly hope to see kind of business growth, because it's not everyone in the real world, of course, not everyone who clicks 10 I would recommend this company is actually going to sit down right there and then and like write an email to a friend. But it generally is indicative of your customers like you, and they probably, at least some of them, are actually going to be talking word of mouth, giving out referrals, or maybe obviously with social media becoming so important as well, maybe like shouting you out or kind of sharing your content on social media. Yeah. So yeah, you would tend to associate a high, especially a very high NPS score with business growth. Yeah.
And perhaps if you've got a high NPS score but are not seeing business growth, that is an indicator to you. You probably, you should be looking at improving your referral system or something, because people are loving you but not actually referring you to other people. That's just one of my takes on it. So we've got plenty of questions coming in. Please feel free to use the chat box, the Q&A box, to get your questions across. But a question for everybody watching this live at the moment: are you using NPS? Are you using Net Promoter Score within your business? And if you're brave enough, would you mind sharing your score in the chat box as well? While I'm waiting for that to come through, we'll share those in a few minutes. Eben, I know we make these webinars as vendor agnostic as possible, but I also know that this webinar came about because SmileBack have made a number of changes, a number of improvements in the NPS part of the SmileBack product. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of how SmileBack uses NPS?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, there are, of course, lots of people out there provide NPS. I mean, SmileBack before we built our own one, or even when we had built it, but originally just for ConnectWise, we were using another vendor for it. But the way we do it is if you're using SmileBack already in your service tickets, you're probably familiar with it being a pretty simple setup. You put it in to the closed ticket notification inside of ConnectWise or Zendesk or Autotask, and it just gets sent out by that platform, by that ticketing system each time. With NPS, basically you're going to get a group of people you want to send these surveys to, and SmileBack is going to send the survey for you. So we organize that into what we call campaigns, which is like basically a group of people who will get the NPS survey on a particular schedule. And you can have more, you could just have one campaign and you're just going to do everyone you want in that one campaign, or you can run multiples as a way of segmenting it. For example, the way we do it is we send an NPS survey to new customers once a month, so everyone who became a new customer in the last month. Then we have a regular one for the most active users once a quarter, and then another one for people who we think are probably important but maybe not so much using SmileBack day to day. We send it to them once every 6 months. So those are 3 different campaigns. And you can run it on a recurring basis or a one-off basis. I would say the typical thing with NPS is to do this on a recurring basis. As I was saying, we have some people we do it quarterly, some people do it every 6 months. The reason for that is it can be good to track it up and down and see well, are these people consistently happy? Did they used to be happy and now they're not? Very bad sign. Did they used to be not so happy and now they are happy? Really good sign. So you build up that kind of comparison by doing it on a repeating basis. It's a single question, so what I was showing you at the beginning, and a comment. That's typical for NPS. It's also reflects what we already do in CSAT in the sense of keep it nice and streamlined, nice and simple for the customer, for your customer. So it's easy for them to answer. They'll answer it more often. You'll get more feedback. We are considering maybe adding the option of doing a bit more in terms of the comment or follow-up. Given that if you're using NPS maybe periodically, you might be able to, it's maybe not such a bad thing to take a little bit more people's time and maybe have some follow-on questions. That's very much just an idea at the moment. There's various things we have more firmed up that we'll be working on. I can talk a bit about that at the end. That's something kind of further down the line. But for the time being, no, it's one question, one comment box. And then, as I say, SmileBack will be sending these surveys for you. They're not going to be sent out by ConnectWise or by Zendesk. So that gives us some control over the email. So we have some customization options, sending it from your own domain, putting in some personalization, and I'll talk about that in a bit because that's one of the newer things. And then probably the really most important part of this is who is it actually going to, who's the audience, and we let you either import contacts from your ticketing system using some various filters, or uploading them by CSV. So it's got various different options, and also in the chat my colleague Yuria is just posting some links in now. So there's a lot to this, but we have a very comprehensive help center, and we also happily do calls, setup, consultation, all of that kind of support is all included in the SmileBack subscription.
So I asked the question earlier, Eben, to the audience. I said, who is using NPS at the moment? And we've got a variety of answers there. Peter said, no, not using NPS, been aware of it for some time, just haven't got to yet, but it has now moved up the list. So you're obviously making an impact here already, Eben. We've got other people saying yes, using NPS. Some people are sharing their scores. Before I share some of the scores that people have been very, very good at, very open and honest in sharing, we talked about that scale, didn't we? Are you likely to recommend us to others? And it's on a scale of 1 to 10. But the NPS score, the Net Promoter Score, is different, isn't it, when you amalgamate them and do the calculation there? Have you got a moment just to tell us about how that calculation is done?
Yeah, so the NPS score can go anywhere from -100 to +100. It's actually the same as net CSAT score inside SmileBack. So as I was saying at the beginning or earlier, this number scale is really, for the purposes of the calculation, actually just divided into three. So 0 to 6, they're called detractors, 7 and 8 is passives, and 9 and 10 are promoters. And basically what you do, much like you do with the free faces in net CSAT, is you minus the detractors away from the promoters, and then you look at that as kind of the proportion of the overall. Basically, if you think of it this way, if everyone gives you a 9 or 10, you have a perfect 100. That's like if everyone gives you a green face on CSAT. Each time you get a one in the middle, a passive, that pulls it down a little bit, and when you get a detractor, a 0 to 6, that pulls it down more. So basically the people down here are kind of weighted against your score, the people in the middle are chipping away a little bit of it, and the people at the top are the ones building it up.
So
I hope that's clear, but I think, just posted an article in the chat because, yeah.
I think you did a very good job of giving a potted overview of how NPS works there. Thank you, Evan. Now, I read a stat, I've made a note of it here, it was from 2018 actually, that some big companies that we would expect to have, I probably assume they would have really, really high CSAT scores. And in a minute, I'll share some of the scores that people have sent to us. Netflix had an NPS of 64, PayPal 63, Amazon 54, Google 53, and Apple 49. I was a little bit shocked with that. Eben, what scores do you see for MSPs typically? Obviously, you work with hundreds, if not thousands of MSPs, but what scores do you typically see across the board?
Yeah, so just to go back a bit, something I was saying earlier, that NPS is actually quite demanding, right? What it's asking people is not just are you happy, but would you actually recommend this company? So don't be surprised or alarmed if your NPS score is a lot lower than your CSAT score, because CSAT is asking a much simpler question, and in a more specific, just one specific area. So it wouldn't be unusual, for example, to have a net CSAT score of something like 96, 97, 98, and then an NPS score of like 40, 45, 50.
Okay.
And actually, in NPS terms, a score, even the early side of like 0 plus is kind of okay. 10 to 30 is like a good, a decent score, not amazing, but like a decent score. And then sort of 30, 50, well, let's say 30, 60 is like very good, and 60 and higher, provided you've got a kind of a decent amount of responses, is actually a really great score, like a really leading score. NPS with our customers, with the MSPs and managed service providers who are most of our customers, they're tending to see like really good scores, and I think that's because MSPs are a very relationship-based business. It's very obviously it's typically it's kind of a recurring business. That's what most of our customers want, is they want the people who keep being customers year after year, who aren't just like doing kind of crisis break fix calls, but the ones who are letting them like really manage things on an ongoing basis. So you would expect any MSP that's staying in business to be good at doing that, and good at getting renewals, good at keeping people happy over a longer term. Whereas things which are a bit more transactional are going to tend to be lower. So that might be why you see some of these big brands, their score maybe isn't as high, because there's lots of different ways people can have a relationship with Apple. There'll be people who are super happy because they've used Apple products for years and they work really well. And then there'll be people who, got a duff iPhone and had a terrible experience getting it fixed, or they went to a shop and someone was rude to them, and that's like stuck with them for the last 6 months or whatever. But it's the people who tend to be, the sectors tend to vary a lot sector to sector. So from what we can see, MSPs actually tends to be a sector where the score is like trending quite high.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, the way I look at it, or when I was running an MSP business, we had clients where we had long-term relationships, and of course there was little peaks and troughs, but it wasn't anything that we couldn't smooth out over the long term. Whereas people like Amazon and others, they have customers, don't they, that do transactions with them, so they're only as good as the very last interaction they had. In terms of the scores, though, you will probably have made Dawn very, very happy. So Dawn is one of the ladies who shared very openly the score. Dawn says after 1 year, our NPS score is 75. That's Dawn Hoffman there. So whatever you are doing, Dawn, share the secret sauce with us, because that is a fairly awesome score based on what Eben has said there. What else have we got here? So we've got people who are just picking up NPS. Let's have a look. People saying, yeah, we kicked ours off, our first NPS campaign off 2 weeks ago. We've had 100% response rate at the moment. And a question here, what's the best practice to remind clients to complete the NPS?
So it's a good thing you asked, because I can get into that exact question very shortly.
Yeah.
But I'll make you wait a little bit, just because I've got a whole slide on
You
on
know
that
how
whole
to
thing.
work us here, don't
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Yeah.
But stay tuned. Yeah.
No worries. We've got other feedback here. Karen says we're an MSP that uses SmileBack at the moment, and we want to implement NPS, start sending out a campaign. So she's here to learn more about implementing it.
Brilliant.
So let's jump in. Let's have a little bit more of a look if we can then.
Yeah. So one thing I just wanted to particularly talk about is, I said, the theme of this is kind of running smarter NPS campaigns, is give you some fairly general advice first, and this would be true, if even if you decide you don't want to use SmileBack and you want to use NPS from someone else, I think this will still be very relevant. As with all things, like, think about what you want to achieve first, and then let the details follow on from that. Of course, you're probably thinking, well, I want to survey my customers and know how happy and loyal they are. But when you're thinking about particularly the audience, are you trying to get kind of regular feedback from the customers you have the contacts you have the most, one-on-one contact with? Are you wanting to hear specifically from the people who are like the decision makers? Are you wanting to send maybe a one-off campaign a few times a year to, let's say, project clients? And maybe you can do all three of those things. But just, it's really worth kind of planning that out a bit first before you jump into the actual playing around inside the app. And then making sure your ticketing system or your export into CSV is ready. And what I mean by that is try and clean it up. We've had a few people run into not like huge problems, but just their first send hasn't gone as well as they wished, because it was hitting, like, let's say, lots of old email addresses and just bouncing. And of course, that was pushing down the amount of responses they were getting. So, make sure you just, when you've decided who it's going to go to, do you have up-to-date addresses for those people? In a lot of ticketing systems, it can store, more than one per person. So, like, what's set as the default, the main way of contacting them? Are there any ex-clients who are still flagged as being active clients who you don't want to send it to? Just check for things like that. If you ever do any email marketing, it's kind of a similar principle to, like, you don't want to keep sending your newsletter to like really old email addresses.
And this final point you mentioned, I think, is so important. Forgive me for jumping in here, but we live in a world of sort of cybersecurity awareness and things. The worst thing I think you can do is get an unsolicited email or an email you're unprepared for, asking you to give feedback on something. So yeah, giving your customers or clients a heads up.
Yeah. So this is really important in terms of, as you say, Richard, reassuring people. It's really important in terms of just, this will help you get more responses. Because if you just kind of send this out randomly, like, some people will respond, but probably a lot of people will. Oh, honestly, a lot of people just won't notice it at all. But some people will see that, go, I don't know what that is. And actually, these clever people at my MSP told me to be really wary of, mystery emails. So I'm gonna delete that. I'm not gonna open it. So we always advise, like, we say this to particularly to new customers who haven't even used any part of SmileBack at all. Please tell your clients that you're going to start doing this first. And even if you have been using SmileBack for a long time with the CSAT, you know, it's worth doing this before you start using Net Promoter Score. So one of the things I mentioned is that in SmileBack NPS, you can choose your sending email address. So you can set it up to use your sending domain, you know, with records, which means it's all properly authenticated. But what I would then say is, once you've decided on that sending email address, send out an email, and we have an ask call about getting more reviews where we even have text for you and say, look, we're going to start doing a survey. The first one is going to be in 1 week. We're doing it to help you. The more feedback we get from it, the better we can help you. You know, any annoying little problems you tell us about, we can fix for you. Anything you like, we can do more of. It's going to come from this address. You know, if you haven't already corresponded to that address before, like put it in your contacts list, put in your safe senders list. And if it is an address, maybe even send that email from that sending address, because then people will open that and that gives it a boost. So it's both about the human side of it, like letting people know to expect it, priming them, getting them ready to respond, and also a bit on the technological side of, like, if they trust that email address, if they open emails from that email address, that's going to mean that, like, future sends are more likely to get to people's inboxes, less likely to be filtered out. And ultimately that means more responses and more feedback for you to work with.
Makes sense. I know Karen said she was looking to implement NPS. So Karen, if I were you, I'd be taking a screenshot of this screen here there, because that is essentially your project plan. Eben has done the work for you up front here. So yeah, you were talking about making the process more human, to let people know, here's why we're going to send you an email, here's where it's going to come from. Mm-hmm. This is why you should respond to it, to give them a gain from doing it, rather than this being seen as a box ticking exercise or anything like that. It's like, we're going to do something with this feedback. In terms of personalization, what does the email look like? I can see, you put on screen here, how much can we amend this email?
Yeah, so this is one of the things we've done recently is we have added in a greeting line. It used to come with just a question. Now, you could still leave the greeting blank if you wish, but you can very easily, as you can see here on the screen, have this hello and then like this first name placeholder. So, it's just like doing a mail merge back when people used to do mail merges for each person, each contact. The name will be read from your ticketing system import or your CSV upload, and it'll actually have their name on it. You can also do that in the subject line, and that's kind of an interesting thing that can sometimes give emails a bit of a boost as well. So it says, Richard, like, what do you think of SmileBack? And then the survey question, you could probably see in this image, is also a kind of an editable box. So we provide the standard NPS language. How likely are you to recommend? Obviously, you'll have your company name in there, to a friend or colleague. And I would say in most cases, probably just leave that as is, because it's well known, it's tried and tested, it's easy to compare your results to the sort of benchmarks we were talking about a few minutes ago. But the reason we decided to make it possible for you to edit it is, one, you may have some different parts of your business where you might want to change it a little bit from you might have the kind of one company name that SmileBack knows about, but in this case you might be asking the customer specifically of the photocopying division or the telephones division or something like that. And the other possibility is, I mentioned earlier, you can send off one-off campaigns, and I noticed some of our customers are, for example, doing some one-off campaigns when they finish a big project that has like lots of different stakeholders who might all be in one company. So in that case, they are sending NPS, and they might be saying, since the completion of our projects, how likely are you to recommend us for future project work, or something that's a bit more specific to the situation. But I would definitely just reiterate that unless you've got a very specific reason, it's probably easiest to leave the survey question just as is.
No worries. Would you go as far as to say it's sacrilege to change it?
No, could we? I mean, we like we let you edit it for a reason. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, my mouse has just gone haywire.
no worries.
So it's an option, but I would lean towards leaving it as is.
Yeah, I'm gonna push you on this one. Have you seen any examples of how it's been modified in a way that you think, oh, that's clever?
I honestly couldn't say. I mean, we do see how people are getting on with this. I haven't yet seen any kind of particularly out there or like novel use of the survey question itself.
Never is. Well, you speak to, like I said, hundreds, if not thousands of MSPs, Evan. So if nobody's come up with a secret sauce for this, I think our advice is probably to stick with the default type of question there.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a question earlier on, didn't we, about how can we and how often should we be prompting people after we've sent NPS to them? How often should we chivvy them or prompt them to get in touch? And how can SmileBack help us with that?
Yeah. So another ability that we added quite recently is these reminder emails. So when you first, so there are two possibilities. Let's say you are running a campaign once every 4 months. You can set up reminders so that the campaign sends the survey out to people, and then if you want, you can follow up with them kind of contact by contact, this sort of manual option, this resend email.
Okay.
That can be good if there's like particular people you want to get to. And you also have the option of doing an automated reminder. So it goes out and then 1 week or 2 weeks, depending, or there's a few different options in that drop down. Everyone who didn't answer yet will be sent it again. So you can also use them together. So basically that would give you like 3 sends in total. It goes out when it's scheduled, some people respond. Then after a week, the reminders go to the people who didn't respond yet. And then maybe you give it another few days or another week, and then you look at who is still left and you resend it to them. And then it's basically done until 4 months comes around. And then of course you are automatically, because it's scheduled to recur, you are then surveying everyone again, and then you can then do these reminders. So you have options for doing it. It is limited in the sense that you can do the automated ones, you can do the manual ones, and you could do each of those once per send. We don't have a kind of unlimited ability, or we don't provide the unlimited ability here to like keep hitting that resend button. The reason for that is there's really a drop off. There's a kind of diminishing returns in that, first time around, a lot of people just won't have seen the email because people are busy, and they will respond well to a reminder. Some people will respond well to another reminder. After that, the people who didn't respond after they got it kind of 3 times in like 2 or 3 weeks, they're really unlikely to respond, and just chasing them again is more likely than not just going to pile up either unopened emails, which is not good for the sender reputation, or the worst thing really is if they mark that as spam, because that means less of your emails are going to get to them in the future.
And it's a bit more of a manual process, but when we did something similar to this, if somebody had not responded after 3 times, we actually got one of the team to pick up the phone to them and just did a little bit of a check-in, say, hey, how things are going? Is there anything we can do better? Are you happy with things? Oh, by the way, did you see the email that we sent?
Yeah.
And it's a manual way of just sort of gently prodding them. And sometimes they say, oh, no, I've not seen it. I'll go and do it now. And other times they said, yeah, not had time to do it, but I will go and do it now that you've mentioned it. Thank you. So, never underestimate, picking up the phone, or actually post-COVID going out and seeing people and checking in on them, humans face to face.
Yeah, for sure. Like hopping channels, like keeping the contact going, but just changing the method or the format could be really good. And we do that. I mean, when me and Yuria, for example, want to get in touch with a customer for whatever reason, like we feel like maybe they need some help, we'll send them one email, then we'll send them another one, And then we'll go, well, maybe should we email them? In most cases, we probably phone them after the
Yeah.
first reminder went unanswered, or we'll leave it a little while and then send them another reminder, but this time after another few weeks, just give them a bit more, like maybe they're obviously people are busy, but just give them a bit of breathing room before doing it again.
Yeah, exactly. And
So I
just
just
remember,
want
you can always
to,
get in touch with them. WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, carrier pigeon, smoke signals. Come on, people, we need to get those NPS scores filled in. So.
yeah. So just to reiterate, because I know someone asked about this, but I know people are really
Yeah,
interested in this. You can absolutely remind people. We've made it really easy to do now, both automatically, so you don't have to do it yourself, and
good.
manually if you prefer that. It's in there. We just don't let you kind of do it to an unlimited degree as well.
Sure. For all the reasons we talked about, there
Yeah.
is going to be a diminishing returns. In talking of new features, I was having a conversation earlier just today with an MSP that's actually multinational. So they've got clients in different countries all around the world. So talk to us about the new time zone feature that you got, because this is going to be genuine of interest to some MSPs who work across different time zones.
Yeah. So this was one that came from this actually came from our customers. In fact, I think most of these new features started life as uh, a request from a customer, or at least kind of we thought of it, and at the same time people asked for it. So before, this was sent based on a time zone that you could set for your whole company in a kind of dusty and distant menu that not many people knew existed. So we've made it much, much better. By on each campaign, it will show a time zone by default, which is still controlled by that setting, but now you can update it. And one, just means you can change it yourself much more easily, like where it's relevant, but also you don't have to use the same time zone for each campaign. So if you're a customer who has like, Britain and Ireland, or a Europe, Western Europe operation, and like an East Coast US operation and a West Coast US operation, you can split up your campaigns and therefore send it at an appropriate time for each of those. Even if you're in the US, I mean, of course, I mean, the USA must have 4 or 5 time zones, I guess. So if you want to get like really detailed and have like one campaign per time zone, so it comes at like exactly um, the time you want, that's in there. And I know we have some really international customers, in fact, who have, like a North America NPS campaign, Europe and Middle East and North Africa campaign, and an East Asia and Pacific one. So it was actually a request from a customer like that, why we ended up doing this. I think
Mm.
also one thing we are looking at is maybe letting you get more, if you wish, more precise with the starting time. At the moment, we do these kind of chunks of the day, um, which was a good option for kind of simplicity's sake when we were first building it. But I think we are considering giving you a bit more control over that as well, if you want to like really dial it into a specific time.
Yeah, nice to see that. And I think a great example of, for anybody who's watching this who's not a SmileBack customer, clients at the moment, these are guys who actually listen to the feedback and do it. In fact, I would go as far as to say their business is driven by the feedback. So they don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk here. Eben, is there any features that we've not covered at the moment that you'd like to shine, and new features on the NPS side that you'd like to shine a light on?
Um, Not so much they're brand new, but just to say that, we've kind of focused in on a few particular things this time, but there's really a wealth of possibilities in there. It's, you'll just see on this page, like we have the language customization, for example. Um, Given that NPS is one of the things you're really trying to do, is find those very valuable promoters for your business. We have the marketing options. We've talked about those a lot. We've done kind of webinars on them, which is why I haven't gone in depth this time. But
Sure.
with NPS, you have the ability to, for the people who are happy, who've already said they're happy, ask them to give you permission to use their comment and marketing, and you can publish that direct to your website with our website widget. NPS can be great for that because, as I say, it can elicit comments that are um, just really nice for kind of testimonials, about the whole business. And you can also drive those people straight onto your Google listing where they can then
Right.
review you. Something that we did If you're a ConnectWise user, you probably know about the ConnectWise marketplace. And indeed, Zendesk and Freshdesk have a variation on this as well. SmileBack is the top rated app in the ConnectWise marketplace. And one of the reasons for that is we used NPS to identify who we should be asking. Obviously, anyone can go on there and leave it, and like, you know, people who aren't happy can go on there and leave reviews as well. I don't think I'm not sure it has ever happened, which is great, but we could really just get many more reviews than other, I'm sure, similarly good apps, but apps who just maybe weren't thinking about feedback in this way. By just going, look, well, these people, they're happy. They gave us good NPS score. They've given us good NPS score in the past. Let's ask them if they'd like to review us. And you know, they might not, but a lot of them will. And you may find that the people who are giving you those 9s or 10s, especially if they're writing really nice comments, especially if they keep rating you like that, you know, every quarter or even if it's just once a year, just ask them to give you a shout out on whatever your preferred. Like I say, we make it really easy to do with Google because that's what people were really clamoring for. Obviously, out in the B2B world, there's loads of these kind of sites now, and there's of course the actual old-fashioned way of just recommend us to someone, like tell someone you actually know in real life, like, to give us a call. So yeah, I would definitely emphasize that. As for what is coming down the line for kind of next for NPS, oh, and so just to say, if you're not using those marketing features already, you can easily activate them for your existing campaigns. You can also set them up in the flow when you're creating a new campaign. We are looking at things like automations because we've had automations for CSAT for a long time, and people are saying, hey, why aren't you doing it for NPS, which is a great question. It's coming. It's just something we're still working on as well. So that will help you get a little bit more just streamlined with the process of, like, you know, let's say you get a bad review, you know, immediately turning that into a ticket or sending an email alert, so, you know, to your client managers so they can get in contact with that person, you know, as soon as possible. So helping you actually use and act upon the feedback you're getting. And that would be probably the next big thing for NPS. But we have something called the public roadmap, which we can drop into the chat, I'm sure, any second now. And that's where you can see what are we working on, what ideas are out there, and you can even add your own ideas. You can vote for existing ideas in it. We genuinely do use that. As I say, a lot of these things I've just shown you either came exactly as a request, like exactly what you see, or at least someone said something that kind of gave us the idea that got the ball rolling.
Yeah. So we will jump over to a live Q&A with the main man himself, Eben Marks. Anything you've want to know about CSAT, NPS? A couple of questions already asking about previous webinars. All of these webinars that we've done today have been recorded. The SmileBack team are really, really good at getting them up and online in a very short period of time. So we did one recently, didn't we, about Google reviews and how you can automate reviews going across there. So for those of you who are not using your customer feedback to help promote your business, maybe that's a webinar for you, but there's plenty of recordings there with gold buried in them. I'd encourage you to check them out. So in fact, Kim asks a question, and I'll jump straight in with this one here. Kim says, how does enable Google reviews work?
Yeah, so when you're setting up an NPS campaign for the first time, or you are creating a CSAT survey snippet, there will be this option to enable Google reviews. And then it also exists if you already created an NPS campaign that's already running, but you didn't put this in, on the Manage Campaigns tab, you can see your campaigns and you can switch it on. What this means is that if you set up a Google profile for your business, so it's called Google My Business, there are all sorts of different tools in there, but one of the things that's right on the kind of main dashboard for Google My Business is called, I think it's Get More Reviews or something very obvious like that. But they will provide you with a link. You can also customize that link so it actually has, you know, your business name in. And what that link does is if you send that to someone, when they click it, it'll open up Google Maps, but not, your listing specifically on Google Maps. And not only that, it'll actually open up a new review form. So, if you've seen reviews on Google Maps, it's a star rating, 1 to 5 stars, or 0. I can't remember if you can leave 0, but certainly it goes up to 5, and a written
You
comment.
can't. Otherwise,
Okay.
there'd be some very angry people
Yeah,
leaving
yeah.
0.
So one
Yes.
to 5. So basically what it means is you take that URL from your Google account, you put it into SmileBack. When somebody clicks a 9 or 10 on NPS or a green face on CSAT, on the comment page, they have the option underneath, like right by the submit button, to tick a box saying, actually, I'd like to share this on Google. So only the people who are happy see this. People who aren't happy don't see this. When they click submit, rather than just seeing a thank you page and SmileBack, they're instead sent right to Google, pops open that new review form, and all they have to do is click 5 stars. From what I can see, almost everyone clicks 5 stars. The occasional person might click 4. And they can either write a comment or they can just paste in the one they already put in SmileBack, because we put that on the clipboard for them. And I've seen people use it. I mean, we use this, of course. Everything we have, we try and use. It works pretty well for us, but for our customers who typically have a much higher volume of tickets than we do, it seems to have really good results. People get a nice, steady, not necessarily kind of hundreds of new reviews right away, but just a nice steady, drip, drip, drip of new, fresh reviews. And that's good because Google likes that. The more people who are reviewing a business on Google, they basically give a kind of a preference to that in terms of determining the relevancy and the placing of that business on things like search results. And especially if you've got recent reviews with text, that really helps.
Yeah, hope that answers the question, Kim. And I would encourage you, if you want to find out more about Google reviews and see it in action as well, and SmileBack's integration with it, the previous webinar we did, if you go to smileback.com/resources, I think it is, or click on the resources tab on there, you'll be able to find it there. Cool. We've got another question here. Good question from Grace. She says, does SmileBack save all of the historical data? For instance, if someone leaves a good NPS score in Q1, but a bad one in Q2. So tell us a bit more about how this data can be used.
Yeah, so all of the data is saved on the NPS results page, just like with CSAT, the CSAT reviews page. You have various filters, so you can look, if you want, just show me the ones we got in the last week. The default is to just show the last 90 days, but you can do a whole, like all time, or you can even put in specific dates, like exactly the 23rd of March to the 26th of November. So it's really up to you. And then you can basically filter by like the campaign, by the company. So I'd say in this case, doing it by the company would be particularly useful. So let's say you check you just got a new batch of NPS results. Lots that look good, but you focus in on the ones which aren't so good, and you go, okay, let's see all the results from just that company. What did they, have they reviewed us before, and was it better in the past, or was it actually worse and it's still not great, but it's a bit better now? We don't currently have something that is going to like automatically kind of show you change, like you got 10, by the way, it was 9 last time, but that's certainly something we can think about, and I'll definitely raise that with the team, because like I say, we keep looking at new ideas for this, we keep releasing new things for this, so it's something we might be able to include in a future release. But for now, the data is all there, and probably the company filter and the time control is what you want to get into that kind of insight. So it's a great question, actually, a great idea.
Yeah, makes sense. Final call for questions. If you've got any NPS CSAT questions at all, for Eben, please get them in now. Is there anything that we've not covered at the moment, Eben, that you think actually this might be useful to share at this point? Anything you think we might have missed? So that's a loaded question,
probably
isn't it? You
the most
talk about this all day.
Yeah, I would actually say not that I think we missed anything here in the presentation, in terms of talking about what I wanted to talk about today, but there is so much to
There
this,
is.
and customer feedback and CSAT in general. So I would say please go ahead and book a call with me and the rest of the customer team here. So we have these Calendly.com links which you can see on screen. We can also drop it in the chat. So you can easily choose like a half-hour or 45-minute slot with us. You can also just send a question in to help@smileback.com. So I would love to talk to you. I've already spoken, me and Yuria, my colleague, who's been working, not on screen, but she's been working the chat very well right now. We have already done loads of conversations with people like about this, or about CSAT, or about using, some marketing features, or just about feedback in general. So please take us up on that offer. All consultation is included in your subscription. I keep saying that because I know some people had some questions about that recently. We don't charge for setup, we don't charge for support, we don't limit you to the amount of calls you can have with us. Just so please go ahead. We would love to talk to you in more depth about this. And Wonderful. That's in the chat now, so you can also click on it right away.
Yeah, so here's a question. I think it was from Terry, but forgive me, it's just scrolled off our screen. I know it's the sort of question that you like it, Eben. It's, what is the best placement of the website widget on your website? Good question.
The exact answer will obviously vary a little bit, but I would say homepage is probably best. And I mean, obviously I will say this, the higher up, the better. Because I want you to use your SmileBack things really prominently. But given that all of our customers are in the business of, relationships, they all care about feedback, because that's why you use SmileBack, or you use any kind of survey tool. So why not show off the data you're getting from that and make it easy for people to find? I've seen some people use the full width style, like maybe not as the very first thing, but as a kind of a module that appears early on, like towards the bottom of the screen when someone first lands, or just beneath the fold. So for the people who are interested enough to scroll a bit. I've also seen people who use one of the more compact formats, like actually very high up. So they have it kind of sitting in the corner of like the initial first home screen view. And then some people have a customer testimonials page, or a see what our customers say page, and they'll put it right on there because they, like the idea of it living in a place that's kind of specific, where they might also then have some longer, like full-blown testimonials or comments from other sources. I've seen some people who kind of have the SmileBack one, and then they might have a widget from, like Google reviews or Trustpilot, or one of those kind of third-party like public review sites. So yeah, but like send me an email, or book a call, so I can look at your specific website, and then we can for sure get into more of a discussion if you'd like to, and I can send you some examples as well.
Terry, definitely reach out to Eben there. He will do you grand if you take a look at the website directly. So we've come to the end of our time here today. Always a pleasure to talk to you about this subject. I think it's clear to everybody watching that you are world-class in this. You know just about everything there is to know. So thank you for your time today, Eben. I can't let you go without asking you a final, really important question. I'm in London. I'm a few miles away from Wembley Stadium. England are just about to kick off in a few minutes' time in Euro 2020 against Germany. You're in Germany. What's your prediction for the big game?
I find it's a really difficult one. I'm gonna say I think Germany will do it, because England are solid, but I'm just not convinced that they are good enough at creating opportunities. And given what we've seen the last few nights, there's the opportunity, the team that just really gets out there and just really goes for it and doesn't care too much about their own scoreline is the one that's tending to prevail. Yeah. So I think Germany might sneak it, as good as the England team are.
Well, I hope you're wrong. I will say that up front. And for those of you who could hear the noise in the background, as I said, I'm a few miles away from Wembley. There's a lot of very excited England fans in London, in the capital at the moment. But for those of you not interested in football, enjoy your evening anyway. Eben, I've had a lot of fun doing this as always. Thank you everybody for joining. I would encourage you, if you've got any value from this, want to watch the replay, it will typically be available within 48 hours or so on the SmileBack website and on YouTube.
We send that out as well.
and you'll send it out to all the attendees. And I would encourage you to get in touch with Eben and the rest of the team there. They're really good and will help you out with any queries you've got. So thanks everybody for joining me today. Eben, thank you very much. And I'll leave it to you to close things off today.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Great questions always. Thank you people for attending. You know, I know we had a great amount of signups, and thank you. You know, we wouldn't be SmileBack without our customers. So please get in touch if you want to know more. And like I said, we will send out this recording. So if you want to share it with people, you know, if you have teammates who couldn't make it, that will be with you probably in a couple of days.
Wonderful. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great evening. And for those of you watching on the replay, why weren't you here with us live? See you in the future. Cheers.
Bye-bye.